Hey everyone, my name is Wendler, and in this video it's going to be part 1 of a quick 2-part series talking about PvP and Destiny 2 as a whole, and problems and changes that are needed in the playlist. So PvP in Destiny 2 is a growing concern as more and more players voice their frustration. The main issues revolve around the lack of updates regarding maps, supers, rules, and just overall balance of PvP. Throughout this video I'll just be expressing concerns, along with personal changes to existing models to help make PvP more fun for everyone as a whole. I was going to hold off doing this video originally, but as of April 3rd we got confirmation from Deej and DMG that Crucible in its pure form still exists, so I decided to move forward with my feedback, hoping it gets to Bungie in some shape, way, or form. Some background info for me, in case you need it, is I have about 30 days played in Destiny 2 PvP. I've played PvP since the introduction of Destiny 1 in its alpha. I've gained each pinnacle weapon that has existed to date, and I personally wouldn't consider myself top 1% because I don't play consistently and there are players better than me. But this feedback is just a mix of my own and players that do exist on that spectrum. I'm looking at this and at these changes from a wide point of view, not an exclusive one. To clarify too, this video is not meant to bash or target any devs specifically, but more so bring reasonable thought to different things that frustrate me and other committed PvP players. So to jump right into it, part 1 is talking about Crucible rewards and its replayability. So PvP gear since the introduction of the annual pass has been disappointing, to say the least, mainly due to the fact that we have had the same gear since the introduction of Forsaken in the loot pool. For a while, I expected base vendors to refresh at some point, but they still haven't yet to this time. A lot of the reason players looked for new seasons or DLC was for the vendor refreshes. Questions like what new weapons are in the loot pool, what new armor is there, what ornaments do we have this season, no longer exist. Replayability at its base in PvP is a problem. Iron Banner takes the brunt of this as replayability of the mode is gone, with no ornaments to grind for, and the weapons are a combination of the same ones we've had at the introduction of Forsaken and old weapons brought forward. We have 3 Iron Banner events this season, and it's for a high impact fusion and a single fire grenade launcher. The armor is very close to the old aesthetic as well, but that's mostly opinionated whether you find that enticing to you or not. Just for comparison's sake, in Season 2, we've had a total of 69 weapons added to the existing pools in the game, so this is Curse of Osiris DLC alone. If we're looking at PvP only, which I'll have the full list on screen for the video, Iron Banner has introduced 6 new weapons, PvP, being Shaxx, has introduced 4 new weapons, and then in addition to everything else, ended up to 69. For Seasons 5 and 6 combined, we've only had a total of 49 weapons enter the game, and the unfortunate part is 40% of them are repeats or old weapons we've seen previous in Destiny 2's lifetime. Iron Banner has introduced 4 weapons, all of them are repeats. Forge and the Raid introduced 11 new weapons. Gambit and Reckoning has introduced 11 new weapons, including their pinnacles. PvP has introduced 5 weapons, only 2 of them are new, being Mountaintop and Recluse, which are the pinnacles. PvE or Zavala has introduced the same amount, again 2 of them being new, being the pinnacles. And then extra weapons, there's been 13, only 3 of them are new, and they're all event focused weapons. Now, I listed the weapons out for example's sake, but if we look at PvP alone, arguably what was the worst DLC by a lot of players still had more PvP replayability than what we have now in Destiny 2. Even if you take Seasons 2 and 3 and combine them to 5 and 6, Seasons 2 and 3, being Curse of Osiris and Warmind, had ornaments for PvP across the board and vendor refreshes. Seasons 2 and 3 also had 9 new weapons for PvP and 12 new weapons for Iron Banner. Seasons 5 and 6, being Joker's Wild and Black Armory, have no ornaments, and the only vendor weapon or armor refresh is Iron Banner. And also, we've only seen 9 weapons enter PvP in the past 2 seasons, and only 2 of them are new, and those 2 new ones are Mountaintop and Recluse. So let's take the idea that this trend will continue forward for the span of the annual pass. This is 9 months of gameplay where a total of only 3 new PvP weapons have entered the loot pool. Again, this doesn't mean other weapons from other sources cannot be used in PvP, but these play a factor in wanting a healthy playlist and people to keep coming back. I've ignored Iron Banner for the past 6 months for this sole fact alone. There's no incentive to keep a player in PvP for a long time period, regardless of their individual skill level. So my base suggestions for just replayability are as follows. First point being introducing enhanced gear for Iron Banner gear. Long story short for this is Iron Banner is considered an endgame activity, and it's the only endgame activity in Destiny 2 that doesn't have enhanced perks available for it, which just needs to be added as a quality of life kind of deal. Enhanced gear should be a post-game comp reward after hitting 2100. So the main issue with comp, which I'll touch on comp specifically in the next video, but the main issue right now is once you hit 2100 and get your pinnacle weapon, there's no incentive for you to stay in the playlist. So what this does is it provides an extra incentive once you get your pinnacle to stay in the playlist, to possibly grind it out to legend, or just stay in for a longer period to get these enhanced gear drops. Third point is to bring back the ornament system for Iron Banner and standard PvP. This just provides more replayability and incentive of the modes. If you look back at seasons 2 and 3, there was really sick ornaments for both Iron Banner and standard PvP, and they're some of my favorite looking gear aesthetically in a long time, and you can't really use them, and there's no way to get new ornaments to do the same thing. Fourth point is to bring more than 2 old weapons back in addition with season refreshes. Again, I have no issue with old weapons, it's just if we're going to do reprise weapon with random rolls, I just wish we would get more. Being stuck with last perdition and then the does not compute scout all season kind of sucks, and it's just not, it doesn't feel good for someone that plays PvP a lot. And then my final point is enhancement cores as an additional reward for rank ups. So you get 1 to 3 cores for small rank ups and then 7 to 10 for large ranks. This is just, again, another way to just reward people of staying in the playlist and grinding it out, and it would add on top with the enhancement cores already being a hot topic in the Destiny community. So again, I have no issues with reprise gear if we get some type of general refresh on top, with adding more weapons than just bringing 2 old ones back. You keep the playlist active for more than a month. It's great old weapons have the ability to random roll, but a lot of players' sentiment is just there's too much old right now, especially when you look at guns that used to be favorites like Hero's Burden, but now have fallen out of the meta regardless of role. I just want something to look forward to versus 9 months of the same armor, same maps, same weapons being rolled over. So the second part of this video is talking about maps. So we got news at the start of Season 3 that new PvP maps would be available to all. There would be no playlist separation. This change was great and was thought to be more inclusive, but again, in Seasons 2 and 3 we've had 7 maps enter the game, 3 of them being reprised. Those are Burnout, Bannerfall, and Shores of Time. Seasons 5 and 6 we have seen 0 maps to this date. So this relates to the same point above or previous, where we will be approaching 9 months most likely with no new PvP maps. Players need something fresh to go for or look forward to. There hasn't been any new strikes set into the game with Strike Loot either. It just seems like a core piece is missing from the game as a whole. My ideal scenario would be 1 new map, 1 reprised map each season if we're going to stick with the annual pass setup. The major hit to this as well is all of the Forsaken maps were designed with the intention of breakthrough, which flopped in terms of community feedback. Realistically, if we take out Forsaken maps, since they were designed around breakthrough, we haven't had maps that were core or highly valued since Warmind's release, specifically since Bannerfall dropped in Iron Banner, which makes at this point that much more important of why new maps can help get people back into the playlist. Third part of this video is talking about game modes, and since we brought up breakthrough and Crucible Labs and more, we'll just jump right into that. So I'm personally fine with Crucible Labs existing for feedback, but those modes should get proper implementation outside of private matches. Lockdown, which was updated zone control, was favored by the community as a whole. Everyone loved it. It was designed with its intentions to be a competitive mode, but stays out of the comp playlist and it's stuck to private matches or a weekly rotation. I personally don't feel this is right, nor does it achieve what I expected from what Labs was originally described as. Per Derek Mantis in the original TWAB when Labs was announced, quote, "Crucible Labs is a way for our team to try stuff out in the wild before it's done and solicit feedback from the community," end quote. Especially when you look into the scenario we had with Breakthrough, I get keeping things close to your chest as a surprise, but it just feels like this contradicts what Labs was brought forward to be. Maybe looking back doesn't do it justice, maybe there was an executive level move as to why Breakthrough wasn't in Labs, but I just think a lot of the issues such as spawn trapping, split spawn, defender advantages, and more would have been ironed out before Forsaken, and the mode could have been in a healthier spot upon launch. Some additional thoughts is I still feel Rift should be introduced as a pure objective focus mode instead of the erratic scoring. Maybe bring it in as two separate modes. You can have a competitive Rift where you only score on dunks, the first to 5 dunks in a comp match wins, and then you can have Mayhem Rift, which is like your quick play version of it, where you have the erratic scoring, you get points off everything, you play to 20k or whatever score cap feels sufficient. Lockdown needs to go into comp. Thinking about the future of Destiny and its evolution, I really want to see Capture the Flag or King of the Hill come back, or just enter the game. King of the Hill can be looked at like salvage in a way, but more so a true King of the Hill. I just wish game modes in general would get proper implementation. I also think it's very, very important that the future of Destiny has these same game modes upon launch, because the biggest thing that hurt Destiny 2 was having a restriction of game modes compared to the fan favorites that existed in D1, and that can't happen twice, otherwise it will be met with huge backlash. So the final point in talking about game modes is Trials of Osiris, or Trials of the Nine. I think Bungie made the right move not copy-pasting Trials into the current state of the game. I don't think elimination itself would play as well as people think outside of maybe 1 to 2 weeks. The problems with comp would just rotate right into Trials, and it wouldn't really fix anything long term. I do think Trials could possibly flourish as a 3v3 focused mode. You can have comp be 4v4, quick play be 6v6, Iron Banner being, the special version of 6v6. Trials could work as 4v4, but the main point is having Trials be different enough to not feel repetitive, as this was a major problem in Year 1. Trials shared the same exact mode and game types as comp did, with just a winning requirement on top. It's also the same issue Iron Banner had for the longest time until it got its own version of Control. I also can't stress enough how important a Mercy is, having no skill based and be based on wins on your card. Back when doing Trials consistently, the Mercy helped save a lot of runs from being killed. Playing an hour plus to lose on games 6 and 7 and needing to burn another hour is just demoralizing and not a fun gaming experience. And then part 4, being the final major part of this video, is Sandbox. So Sandbox Changes, as everyone knows and as everyone can see at this point, they take a long time. I'm not a game dev. I'm not going to sit here and say that things are easy to fix, and I also respect that the team may have wanted things to settle before making a drastic change. We got news in the most recent TWAB that PvP is pretty much a staple in Destiny, and they will not ignore it, and they will still show that they'll be making respective changes. But it's just hard for players to respect that decision when you look at Nova Warp as an example. It dominated PvP for months, but then it gets killed to a point that's worse than what it entered the game in as, given it's being buffed, but the point still remains. Or how long it took One-Eyed Mask to get its respective treatment, and now Spectral Blades. At its base, the Sandbox is still pretty damn good with a few exceptions. Special Economy is the best the series has seen, Titan Supers and Warlock Supers are pretty solid. Console needs a little additional love though, and I'll just list the major general changes and then platform exclusives below. So the first major general change is all supers should be able to be shut down by the following special weapon archetypes: adaptive and aggressive snipers by headshot, aggressive and precision shotguns by a charged melee body shot, slug shotguns by a charged melee precision hit, and then precision and high impact fusions with a full burst connection and a charged melee. The reason I offer this is with special ammo assisting in super shutdowns as it did in D1, you allow things like heavy ammo to be less overall dominant in the game to counter. Heavy then opens up as to what a player can run, allowing the player to have more options to counterplay is important. Based on Bungie's internal numbers, a baseline for resilience can be made to establish as to when an archetype would fall off damage-wise, making resilience more important, since Titans and Warlocks can easily spec into it. If you're fearful for weapons like Izanagi, the key thing to remember is Izanagi's main trait is the fact of stacking rounds to have an heavy-esque damage numbers in the special slot. The benefit it had of one-shotting supers was just an added benefit, but the main focus was just having a power weapon in a different slot. The one separating factor, since Izanagi is an adaptive frame, is when stacking rounds would allow it to break into the aggressive sniper territory in PvP, avoiding the fall-off that adaptives would hold once Bungie looks into resilience numbers. So that could still be the difference maker, and that way you don't remove any utility it has in PvE. Not only does this change allow a majority of high-end special weapons to be relevant, but it also allows exotics to have a larger place in the PvP sandbox as well. Exotics that fall into these archetypes that I've listed are the Chaperone, Izanagi, Arbalist whenever that comes out because it's going to be a linear fusion, so why not, Merciless, Borealis, Telesto, Lord of Wolves, and Jotun. Legendaries that follow into these archetypes, which I'm just going to list off year 2 for simplicity. You have shotguns are Toil and Trouble, Good Bone Structure, Dust Rock, Retold Tale, Mindbender, Last Man Standing, and the updated Balogan. For fusion rifles, you have the Wizened Rebuke, Loaded Question, Erentil, Techian Force, Tempered Dynamo, and Main Ingredient. And then snipers, you have the Long Goodbye, Soul Survivor, Fate Cries Foul, Bite of the Fox, Dreaded Venture, Long Shadow, Elegy, Tatara Gaze, and the Show of Force. A huge amount of problems in this game revolve around the dominance of roaming supers and having no valid counters. In Destiny 1, there was a skill gap in when popping a super was smart, and a timing window to moving in on your opponent. Too soon you would be dead, and too late you would be dead. Of course, while still rewarding the individual skill of players. In Destiny 1, when Sunbreaker released and had enough armor and super to withstand a counter, there was chaos and it led to an extreme use of Sunbreaker. Fixing this allowed it to be back in line with the sandbox, and things were back to a more normalized state. Sunbreaker at that point is a prime example of what currently dominates the D2 sandbox as a whole. Also in Destiny 1, shutdown supers were not immune to being countered mid-animation or following. A shutdown super should not have high armor to supplement its damage, popping a Blade Barrage low health should be dangerous, and with the changes it's still not as punishing enough to those players. Given suggestions to make roaming supers more skillful, all this would do without a change to shutdowns is boost these supers up in usage rate because of their ease of use. And the long story short of that is they just shouldn't have the freedom of doing so. The next major point is that Spectral Blade needs a reduction of armor while invis. We already know that Spectral is getting an adjustment, so we'll have to wait and see what those changes are. I still think True Sight personally is way too strong. True Sight out of invis and neutral, as I mentioned, is too strong and forgiving based on its kill requirements. You either remove True Sight period when you are out of invis and change the way True Sight works. The one way you could change the way True Sight works is have it only ping your nearest 1 to 2 targets instead of the full map, and getting a kill on them gives you more information for your next 2 targets. Just make the super more stealth assassin-like and less tank-like, and to do that you kind of have to remove some vision with it too. Third major point is that Tether should kill on impact period for both Quiver and Bloodbound. The super is still poor due to the animation suspended, that you're like just suspended in air for a long time, and there's no realistic way to get an initial kill off. Quiver's benefit should be kills on impact, and then if you get 2 kills and someone pops a super, they take 1 arrow and die. That wouldn't be OP at all. You would see more variability in supers across the board, which would be nice. Fourth point is that Arcstrider needs its helicopter move reinstated to middle tree. The super is just dramatically behind due to the dominance of aerial play in the sandbox, and no combos to seek or shut down players that jump. Every other roaming super has an aerial counter except for Arcstrider at this time. The other point too is originally I was going to have it reinstated in general, but with the recent changes to the other two trees, I wouldn't mind getting it put to the middle tree since the middle tree is a lot more acrobatic than the rest of them. Fifth point is that Golden Gun's knives for top and bottom tree need to return to their D1 values. They just aren't useful where they're at right now. Sixth point is that Dawnblade Phoenix Dive needs a buff to the regen it provides. It's borderline useless and could help bottom tree get more use. There's also a slide lock mechanic following use that needs to be removed or toned. If you're going to increase the regen, the slide lock is fine as like an offset, but the regen just needs a small buff to it. It doesn't need to instantly fill your health, but just be a little bit more than what it is now. And you can even add a cooldown on top of that too. 7 point is that Vortex Nova Bomb needs just a radius increase. It's a joke compared to its D1 counterpart along the same lines as Tether. And then my 8th and final general point is that hand cannons need a complete rework in their intentions. The first thing is to remove Bloom and implement proper damage fall off that Rise of Iron had introduced. And then with damage fall off in mind, your 4 archetypes should be changed as follows. 110 should have the highest range stat available in hand cannons but the lowest stability. 140s should be average handling but be a range and stability hybrid, so high range, high stability, mid handling. 150s should have high handling, high stability but have mid range, and then 180s should be the highest stability in the hand cannon archetype but offer the lowest range in the class. Going forward with this, 110s and 180s should be polar opposites of each other in Sandbox due to their fire rate, and then 140s and 150s would have the trade-off of handling versus range. In addition to these changes, you would have time to kill changes as follows. 110s would be a 1 headshot, 2 body shot. 140s would be a 2 headshot, 1 body shot, or a 3 headshot to start the test to see if more needs to be done. 150s would need to be a 3 headshot kill, and then 180s would be a 2 headshot, 2 body shot. The main point of this is 180s right now break into multiple archetypes as a 180, whereas no other hand cannon in the hand cannon tree does this, and there's ways to still have 180s be effective without making them overbearingly dominant like Not Forgotten or Service Revolver currently are. Getting into specifics, console specifics, hand cannon visual recoil for 140s and 150s needs to be reduced. They need a little bit more stability on console as well. It's just horrendous to try and use a hand cannon compared to a 180. 180s are just night and day easier to use because of the high stability and no recoil control. For PC specifically, Ace needs slightly less range to bring it in line with other hand cannons. It's clearly the dominant hand cannon on PC, and it's very easy and very forgiving to use. Toning its range down a little bit would help bring it in line. I honestly feel that Not Forgotten would be as dominant on PC if Ace didn't have the range that it currently does in the sandbox, because Ace is the gun that duels Not Forgotten. LMGs and aggressive pulses both need a range reduction and stability decrease. They just dominate the game because there's little to no recoil and they cover a massive range. Aggressive pulses specifically because they compete at scout range, making scouts pretty much useless because it's easier to shoot 2 bursts off versus shooting 4 shots with a scout rifle. And then Spectral Lunge is tied to FPS and needs to be looked at in general because it's hard to outrun. If Sandbox could get fixes out faster to the game, it would help the game not feel as boring long term. Along with fixing the general replayability in the game, you just provide more life to PvP so that it's always refreshing for new players and it's a good experience for everyone, as they will always feel like they're getting some type of investment out of it. Just like you would with PvE, those same thoughts in mind need to be brought over to PvP. So that'll do it for part 1. Covering general PvP as a whole. The next video that will be right after this is covering competitive specifically for that whole video. I will include in the description a link to my general script write-up if you'd prefer to read that on top of listening to either video. That's perfectly fine too. Again, I appreciate you guys watching, and feel free to let me know in the comments if you agree with anything, disagree with anything. You can check me out on Twitter at twitter.com/Wendler34, and I stream on Twitch on the weekends at twitch.tv/Wendler. I'm always down to discuss different things about the game, to give different feedback, so feel free to just let me know. And again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time. Wendler out.